There we are. If you'd like to start us off.
So my name is Rabbi Sandra Kviat. I'm the rabbi of Crouch End Chavurah, which is the liberal Jewish community in Crouch End. And I've been a rabbi there for 10 years.
Excellent. My name is Revd Timothy Miller, and I'm the priest in charge of All Saints Church in Highgate. And I've been here for 3 years.
And it's so nice to finally meet. I mean, it's been good for the multi-faith forum that we get to know each other.
Yes, that's right. That's right. No, it's been good. It's been good. Excellent. Well, we're here as part of the conversations of Interfaith Week, and just looking at particularly thinking a little bit about our own kind of personal and spiritual practices, faith practices, and how they might I guess just how we're finding them at this time of COVID, thinking about Interfaith Week and its importance, and also just the things that we're learning from the general changes and uncertainty of life right now. So, Sandra, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. Well, so one of the major areas or themes I think that we've all been on the one hand struggling with, on the other hand have spent a lot of time on deliberately thinking and doing, is around hope. You know, in all of this that we're going through, finding, maintaining and realizing what hope means to us, and the things that we do to keep up hope, I think are one of the things that makes the biggest difference to our well-being, both emotionally and spiritually, as well as physically. And so I thought it would be really interesting if we talked a bit about hope, both from, if we start from a personal perspective, so a bit of like, you know, when you find hope, Tim, in your life, what are the things that you do that gives you hope? I thought that would be, that's a good place to start, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, one of the things that I've kind of really been leaning into is those small kind of tangible places of where there's some sense of kind of completion or normalcy. And for me, one of the places that I get that the most is in cooking. So thinking about, when everything else feels uncertain and I'm not sure when it's going to happen tomorrow or what the government might be saying that's going to change things. And also to that sense where hope feels, which appropriately is that thing that we don't yet kind of fully realize or have in front of us, aiming for and believing that there's something different around the corner. Something as simple as kind of knowing a recipe and completing some food and sharing that with my family has been a real kind of anchor point for me in the last few months particularly. So, yeah.
Oh, I definitely echo that. Absolutely. I'm very tired, I have to cook for the kids, oh my God, but rather the bit where you have time and space to actually enjoy it as well. Absolutely. I think for me, and this is not something I did before lockdown, though I probably should have, I've started running. Or plodding, I think is probably a better description of what I do. But the getting out a couple of times a week and just being outside and, getting your pulse running and just being out in nature. So I'm lucky where I am that there's quite a lot of woodland around here. And just being reminded that there's something more, something bigger than yourself, that the trees are there no matter what, they're just there, they do their thing. And, being there and being pulled outside of the four walls of our houses. And without children and anybody else, just to give yourself the space, that I find is really has made a huge difference. I mean, half the time I don't feel like it, obviously. It's raining or it's cold or it's whatever, but I know that towards the end of it, it feels different. And therefore it's much easier to be within these same four walls again. So for me, it is that, but not just going out for a walk, which is really important. I do that anyway, but the running bit, it adds a bit. And it definitely gives me a sense of hope and a sense of connection. Now that we can't connect with people face to face in the way that I guess both of you and I really find is an important part of what we do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you think some of that hope for you comes from that kind of doing something different that you weren't doing before, or is it just that kind of, as you say, that kind of disconnect from everything else? Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's definitely endorphins, but it's a sense of giving yourself a bit of structure, I think. Like it is so, even though anybody who can work from home, I'm sure we've got millions of emails and meetings and whatever, but we don't have the structure as there was before, where you're going out to see someone, or you're going into this, you're doing whatever. It's very formless if you're not careful. It's just one endless stream of emails or news or planning or whatever it is. And it's not broken up as it normally would. And so giving ourselves a little bit of structure, I guess some people call it discipline. I think of it as structure. I find it very helpful. And forcing ourselves outside, no matter the weather, because that is hard. I know I'm Scandinavian, I'm from Denmark, so we're used to bad weather. But it's a really important thing to do, I find. So yeah, I guess it is something I didn't do before, but I certainly hope that it's something I'm going to continue with.
Yeah. And I think that sense too, as you were saying about, when everything can feel just like that Groundhog Day, where we're just kind of constantly repeating the same thing. When you go outside and, being able to see actually from spring, when the trees started coming into leaf, to them changing colors as the weather got colder, to now seeing kind of the trees bare is a really good reminder that actually time has changed, that things are different, that, as you say, there's that hope that we're not just kind of stuck in that same repetition of unknowing and uncertainty, and that kind of, as you say, that kind of framing and structure to be able to remind ourselves actually is a really good place of hope for that as well. Mm-hmm. I like that.
And there's I don't know about you, but I started this. It's an age-old Jewish wisdom tradition called Mussar, which is not, unfortunately, because of the Holocaust, most of its proponents died out. So it's only kind of come back into, fashion is the wrong word, but awareness. But it's a mixture. It's about wisdom in our own lives, and it has this thing with, like, you read a chapter a week and you discuss, and it's just such, again, because of lockdown, it actually afforded me the time and the structure to say, no, this is what I do every Tuesday morning. I read my chapter and I think about it and I journal about it, and then it gives you something to do or think about or act on for a week, and then I meet with another colleague where we talk it through. And that, to me, actually has been incredibly hopeful as well, of looking into ourselves, about our actions and why we do what we do. That's very nourishing. So I found that on a personal level, that is giving me a lot of hope.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm quite a kind of reflective person. I spend a lot of time in my, even in the busyness of London and when life was normal before, I spend a lot of time in my own head. And what I found actually strangely through lockdown is those places where I need to start to find out, what the actions are from all of those internal conversations. Because recognizing that, particularly thinking about something like our normal Sunday gathering, where I would run into kind of 40, 50 people on a Sunday morning. And so, I'd be thinking about them during the week. If I didn't get to a phone call, or if I, didn't get the email out, I knew I'd see them on Sunday and have those connections. And now I'm actually having to think about actually the practicality of, kind of, who I am in those moments, and what was so easy to kind of keep connections with during the week now becomes actually something that I need to hold a lot more intention of. And through that, I've actually I've had to do some really kind of deep soul searching and work with other people outside of myself to actually come to terms with some of that stuff, because it's easy stuff for me to own and say, oh yeah, these are my habits, this is my character, but actually having to kind of own that with somebody, and as you say, actually finding that there is some interesting places of hope, is thinking about not only the work kind of I'm doing with somebody, but actually being able to sense that kind of growth and change and pattern for more meaning and depth, outside of lockdown, not just because I have that space afforded, and making it into something that will be, something that I will carry on with me outside of this is, really grateful for that. Really grateful for that. Yeah.
Somewhere, there's an American writer and activist called Rebecca Solnit,
Okay.
and she has this really interesting definition of hope. And she says lots of things, but the one liner is, the hope is an opening amidst enormous amounts of uncertainty and complexity. And I found that really, really useful, because what is hope? We talk about it. Is that feeling, but is it golden sunrises? And it's really hold on with those, because it's not naivety, it is not optimism. Everything's just going to be fine, because that, as she says, optimism affords you the ability to just sit back and be like, well, somebody else will sort it out. It will happen. It will solve itself, right? Or pessimism, like nothing's ever going to happen, right?
Yeah.
I like her idea of hope is an opening, and it's small, and it doesn't have to be perfection. Like, you don't have to solve everything for you to have hope. You don't have to solve all of poverty or all of COVID or all of whatever it is. Hope can be the small acts or the openings that we do. And I find that's what I've been looking for, is those openings. Where is there an opening where we can act or do? Because that does give us hope. And as you said, the food bit is such a nice, small but significant part of the day. Like, it's a small opening in our everyday, even if we don't get to see anybody else. And then there's openings also, as a community, we're looking for to helping other people find those openings as well.
I really like that. Do you want to say more about where you've seen those openings within your community?
Well, so partly seeing them, partly is making them. So that's the interesting bit. I think we have to go looking for them, because we're within the same four walls. We don't go out and say, well, you randomly meet someone, and it just, it's natural. So we have to make them, I think, when we're stuck like we are. So one opening is just the little things that we can do, which, you probably did the same thing. In the very beginning of the first lockdown, we called every single member in the community. We organized a group of people to call everybody else. And both for the people who received the call, it was an opening. It was how are you doing? Are you okay? Is there anything we can do? What's happening? But it was actually for the people doing the calling, that thing of like, helping other people helps yourself, that, it goes two ways. And so that was creating these small openings where by getting a group to call everybody else, the group itself found openings, but so did the people who were called. Or because food poverty is such a major issue. I mean, it has been, and it's terrible in a country like this. It really shouldn't be, but there is. It's gone much, much worse. And so we knew that there was a community group or a school in the other part of the borough who we already knew, and that they already had a food bank. So we decided to do food solidarity, we called it, as an opening of like, if we have enough of this, then surely we can give more. So it wasn't just about food banks, it was about direct engagement. And not in a I feel so sorry for you, but rather everybody should have food. Like, it is unacceptable that there is food poverty. So those are the kind of practical openings, but the act of organizing it and getting somebody to have a little box in front of the house, or we drop it at your house and then they have to drive it across. Lots of people get engaged, and in those small acts of helping others, I think we all find hope.
It's interesting, as you say, like, there's a place where where what's been most meaningful is that kind of direct connection to something, and having, and notice that in our church community as well, is like inviting people to kind of donate, for something as simple as Harvest Sunday, bring a few tins or whatever. People are keen about that, but what they want to know is kind of where it's going to, and much more this year than any year before. People were asking me, so, where is this going to? And knowing that, as you say, we're not just doing this out of charity to make us, feel better about this moment, or this is just habit. We do this every year in October. But actually to say that actually we recognize that there is a bit of systemic injustice that we can chip away at. And as you say, make that opening of hope, both for ourselves, that we're doing something more meaningful than just, a generic charitable contribution, but also too for the other people, saying that, that in the midst of this, we recognize, even in times where we're all feeling uncertain and often overwhelmed, there's still people kind of taking those practical steps to kind of live out that opening of hope together. Really, really important.
Yeah, and it's constantly thinking of, like, where is there an opening? Is it literally just going and chatting to your neighbor and making sure that they're all right, your elderly neighbor who doesn't get out a lot? Or is it in a community setting where we know that one phone call or a walk, so we are allowed, rules out, we can go for a walk with somebody else, one person, forcing, again, making sure that we go out and do those walks if we're both well and everybody feels comfortable about it. We started, it was very sad because we had to stop, obviously, because of the new rules, but we started doing rambles. So the community in groups of 6 would go, and if there's more than 6, and the first group got sent off, and then the second group, and just that act of walking and talking, it was not organized in the sense, like, there wasn't like a theme we had to do. I did consider, should we do like a study walk? I was like, also do that, but actually, let's just let people walk and talk. That's an opening of being allowed to, I guess, a large proportion of my spirituality and where I see the divine or God is actually an engagement with another person, the meeting, the very barbarian, I guess, like the meeting with another person. And we're doing it on Zoom, which is great, but it would be even, that connection would be even more amazing if we'd actually been able to sit face to face. And so to make spaces where people can have those spiritual openings with another person, where everybody feels comfortable. We don't have to achieve anything. It's not a tick boxing exercise. It's literally turning up and walking for an hour. That's an opening, I think. And it's certainly one of the things that I'm going to encourage our community to do. I'm going to give them a challenge, I think, and be like, can you do 5, 10 or 15 kilometers a week until we get to Hanukkah, which is, I just think we all need that kind of a little bit of a practical push in order, or priority or goal. I think that gives us hope that it's something to hold on to. That is a proper opening, I hope.
Yeah. Well, I was really struck by what you were saying there, thinking about, that difference between, rising to a challenge that's set before you and engaging with an experience in a very kind of transactional manner. And I think, actually what was interesting, as you were saying that, I was just thinking, how often, particularly before all the lockdowns and, global pandemics, was there still even with the kind of socializing and fellowship that we do in person, there was this kind of pressure to make the kind of transactional value of our spiritual gathering to such a quality that people actually kind of put it in their diary to commit to it at some point. And actually recognizing that actually what we need to maybe do is have those kind of more moments of kind of challenging commitment, but that actually are removed from those spaces of kind of transactional values or systems, I guess, in that way, to have those times together. And I think you're right, that pressure it's like, okay, I've got 6 people together for the first time since March, so what can we do in that moment? And actually sometimes what you can do in that moment is just hold that space intentionally together, and recognize that it's that kind of coming together in fellowship that actually is that hopeful opening, and the essential opening to where we actually connect with the divine in our fellowship with each other. I really like that. That's good.
We have I can't remember who said this, but that you see the divine in the face of the other.
Yeah.
You know, I love that bit. I think a lot of people can have a spiritual experience in nature. Is, as somebody said, it's a bit of a freebie. You know, it's quite easy. It's lovely, right?
Yeah.
But to have a spiritual experience not in nature necessarily, or certainly with other people, you know, it can be harder, but there's something incredible about it when you really meet with another person. And it is that it is interesting. What is it about the fact that we're doing this, and it is brilliant, like, but again, I know if had we been in the same room together, it's even more. There's something that you can't describe. We call it the Shekhinah, so the indwelling of God in where we are. That sense of wherever two people, we say, study or talk, you know, genuinely and think, the Shekhinah dwells over us, is the idea. Like something is different when we meet, which is why I think we're also, I wouldn't say suffering is the wrong word, but we're not getting that enough. But so I was also thinking, because there's a bit that we do personally, there's a bit we do the community, and then I was also thinking of like what in our religious traditions are helping us hold on to hope, you know, in the everyday. It doesn't have to be like as I said, the grand big hope, the whole world is at peace and you know, heaven has descended on earth, you know. may that come, but you know, probably tomorrow. So how do we do how do we get a sense from our tradition in our everyday or our weekly rhythms that might be even stronger than it was before? A sense of gives us hope. So I was just wondering for you, because I guess you can't, and I'm sorry, my understanding of Christian theology might just not be strong enough, but for you do, sorry, I just forgot the word, on a Sunday in the church.
Yeah.
You do the
Eucharist. Eucharist or Mass.
I guess that is a tangible for you, a tangible sense of hope. I guess. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, definitely. And so and that's like the, you know, going on that sense of, as you're saying, the kind of the kind of indwelling or overshadowing, I guess, of the glory of God in those moments, you know. So kind of the Eucharist being kind of the central sacrament of the church, where we say that in the kind of tangibility of bread and wine, in our fellowship with one another, somehow in that is the life-giving active Spirit of God, which is taking the ordinary and making them holy, that we can then take that holiness and bear that holiness out for the life of the world. And that it requires, I think that's the thing, is, you know, it requires being together. You know, it's that sense of, you know, the old sense of hospitality and sharing bread with each other. You know, bread was shared when the two people sat down and broke it together, not when someone said, here's a loaf for your travels, enjoy, right? You know, and yeah, exactly. It's been good, but yeah. And there's something, you know, there is something about actually those recognizing, I guess too, you know, somehow in their absence, recognizing how important they have been and are for people, but then actually being able to think a little bit more about kind of why they are kind of meaningful and important. Because obviously, you know, when the structure was just kind of so normal before, you know, you wouldn't have thought to somebody to say on a Sunday morning, we're going to gather together for communion, but do that in your home. Like that, you know, no one would have. So the normative practice of being together, and then people saying, oh, you know, it's just I'm not at church, but it's like actually there's layers to that. And then you start to, I think, and that's, you know, where I think there's such rich tradition, particularly when you look in the Psalms, where, you know, just those great laments of kind of loneliness and disconnect, which sometimes are right in the middle and part of kind of communal life, and sometimes those are just deeply personal with the disconnects and that we feel kind of from other people. And I think for me, that one of the things I found really kind of life-giving is although I'm doing it alone in the sense of doing it kind of from my house, daily prayers, I've started doing it through kind of our Facebook Live on our church website. and through Facebook and with the church. And it's been really nice to actually be able to kind of, in a sense, I guess, kind of publicly offer those prayers on behalf of the community, and in those moments to myself, and recognize that actually in the midst of uncertainty and unknowing, and places where I don't feel I have any sort of words that is going to change it and make a difference, I'm kind of resting in kind of the faithfulness and the prayers of those who have gone before. And I'm finding that kind of a real kind of important kind of, I guess, anchoring and stability in the midst of this time. So
yeah, and because it's interesting how, you know, our faith traditions have a lot in common, and they have a common background, I guess we could call it, although of course our interpretations are quite different.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, we have the same symbols, but they mean something different, and we do something differently with them and at different times. So we of course also have bread and wine on a Friday night. So we have the candles first, you know, the lighting of you know, bringing light, literally, that's the marker point. Like, when does Shabbat start for us? Well, it starts on a Friday night, and it's particularly in the act of lighting a candle. And we, you know, every faith tradition has candles, as you know, that bit is incredible what it means to have a live candle in front of you. And then we have the wine, and then we have the bread. And though it's not the same symbolism for us at all, it's more the act of blessing the bread is what's important. The bread itself doesn't have any spirituality in that sense, but of course what we do instead is that we have a tradition around baking it ourselves, or buying it, to be fair. But you know, baking is really great. We do encourage everyone to bake it, and so there's that sense of, we talk about like the making of food and the preparation on the Friday, and the smells of the bread, and it's a quite specific kind of bread. It's very sweet. It's like a brioche. If you haven't had challah, it's very, very sweet. It's very enriched. It's meant to be very different from the rest of the week. And it sets that marker point that the next 24 hours are different. You're meant to do something different than the rest of your week. So it is about bringing the sacred into the everyday, but setting aside time for ourselves. And that setting aside of time is, I think, again, has become even more valuable in lockdown, because the days are just endless, you know, they all look the same. You don't go anywhere. You can't, you know, we have a tradition of going for Shabbat lunches or dinners, or, you know, whatever, going and visiting family or friends, or, you know, meeting up. And of course we can't. So the intentional, as you were saying, the intentional setting aside of Friday night all the way to Saturday night to do something different on Shabbat is really important. And there's so many ways of doing it. And, you know, the Orthodox does it one way, and everybody does it slightly differently. But to realize that that is what we should be doing, or that helps us, that is an act of hope. I find every time is that beautiful opening. It's like, thank God it's Friday. We're just crawling our way to Friday. Yes. And then we set this space, and we do whatever we do, you know. So in my family here, we have a tradition of going for a walk, because that's a really important part of what we do with the kids. But it could be lots of other things, you know. It doesn't have to be, now that we can't go to synagogue anymore, like, it can be so many different things. And because the two themes of Shabbat is about freedom and is about creation, those two themes, again, are incredibly, they're openings, they're incredibly hopeful. You know, freedom from our everyday, in the sense of we shouldn't be defined by what we do as a living necessarily. On Shabbat, you know, we talk, I will never ask you, what do you do? You know, I might do it on a Thursday night, but on a Friday, I will not, because it's not about what you do for a living, it's about who you are. And so rather, I'd ask you then, what are your things, you know, what do you like to do in life? Or what makes the most, what's important to you, or whatever it is. So there's that freedom to remember that we are human beings first and foremost. We're people, and we're not defined. So it talked about freedom from slavery, right? And Egyptian slavery in particular. But I think in a modern context, it's about not to be enslaved to the everyday structures of what we do and how we earn a living, for example. And then the other theme is about creation and nature, and the continuous recreation of nature. And it reminds you to go outside again, and, you know, and find that hope in the outside. So for me, I mean, lockdown hasn't changed what we do on Shabbat, interestingly, because it's already meant to be a family thing that you do. But I think its significance and its ability to give hope, I think, is heightened.
Yeah. Well, I think that lead, well, as a very quick side point, the more kind of brioche type bread compared to the dry, tasteless wafers we have sounds like a good reason for conversion, if anything else.
Remember, we got matzah.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
That's pretty much the same thing.
But even that's doing a lot better than our wafers. Yeah. You don't wish them on your enemy. That's the thing. But I think I was really just thinking about kind of that third space we talked about engaging with here, which is that, those things where we don't find hope. And I was just, that image that you were speaking of Shabbat starts when the darkness comes and you light the candle to bring the light in, and then saying about how it's about kind of looking at those structures and systems of our life which actually we need to be freed from for that recreation. So I was wondering if that kind of space of where maybe that sense of kind of where kind of the slavery is, or that lack of hope. If you'd like to say something about that, I was really, yeah.
So just to clarify, in case anybody wonders, so the way how we know when Shabbat is technically, just legality, is 3 stars in the sky. That's how you know, right? That's when we're ready, and then people will like. But obviously, with technology, that's not really an issue. We know when we sundown. So I come from a very progressive tradition, obviously, which means that the way we decide on what we can and can't do is very different from a traditional Jew, for example, just so people understand the difference. And we make the choices ourselves. But for me, the bit of freedom, for example, is quite practical. It's not because I think that Jewish law tells me I'm not allowed to use electricity, which is what for a tradition to do, that is very important. For me, that's not really the issue. But it is the fact of switching off my phone, like switching off everything on the computer. So deliberately, actually, not most of the time I just flip the computer lid down and then it's there immediately when I open. But the act of switching everything off and saying, no, for the next 24, 25 hours, I'm not doing computers, I'm not doing work, unless of course I'm leading a service and then I need my laptop. But the point is, the emails are not open, the work documents are not open, my phone is not on. I deliberately switch it off and stick it in a drawer somewhere, so that I am free from that constancy of work. Because I don't know how about you, but the phone, right? Always there. It's like the first thing you touch in the morning for most of us, right? And it's the last thing you touch at night. It's kind of become like a third, a sixth finger or something. It's always there. And I'm not saying technology isn't amazing, because I honestly think lockdown would have been a much, much worse experience had it not been for technology. But it also invades, and it bleeds into everything we do. And it's important to stop sometimes. It's important to say, okay, the phone goes away. I do not need to know what is going on in the news at all times of the day. For 24 hours, the world's going to survive without me knowing what's going on in the news. It doesn't mean I can't use my phone to call my dad, for example, or my sister. Or, it's about what do we use it for. So freeing ourselves from the constancy of social media, of the news, is really important. I think it helps us spiritually. I also think just emotionally for our general well-being. To just give ourselves some time to do other things, to read a book. I've started lockdown. I'm buying books again. Everything was on my phone. I was just reading as a document or a Kobo or Kindle or whatever. And now I actually have real books. It's amazing. It's like you touch them and you're reading them, and nobody interferes while you're reading them. You don't get a message in the book saying somebody has texted you. It doesn't call you while you're reading it. And it's those little things in our lives that makes a huge difference. Whereas, it's everyone's talking about this. This is not a religious thing, but we have to be careful with how much media we consume, how many news. and how much we're online. So going offline, unplugging as we call it, unplug Shabbat is just amazing.
And I think, one of the things you were saying there, one thing that I found really difficult, particularly at the beginning of kind of lockdown and stuff, is that, all of a sudden you're even more dependent, like actually dependent upon it. Before, I found so many different ways to justify the need to have my phone on or to be checking social media or the, news feed or whatever. And, it's like, it's important that I'm here for people. But actually, all of a sudden, we moved into a space where, as you say, with the technology, that became an essential lifeline in kind of our life and community. And so it was even easier to say, actually, all those justifications that I might have previously been able to say, yeah, that was just a bit far-fetched. That was just me kind of taking the mick or whatever. All of a sudden it's like, oh, but now I see where it is really important, and actually recognizing too, as you say, that actually the world can still carry on, and whether I know what's going on in this 24 hours or not. There are other ways to get in touch with family and friends, in those important moments. It doesn't require me to have my phone with me, or doesn't require that my computer on. I think it's interesting you said that. I've started only in the last kind of month, is kind of my day off. It tends to be Saturday, and so Friday night before I go to bed, I make sure my computer's actually turned off, as compared to just kind of, yeah, exactly. I'm keeping it real. I'm trying to keep it real. and actually as you said, there's something very different about, like, the amount of times where I'm like, oh, I forgot to check that email and things, and I know the computer's on, so I don't have to wait for it to load up and log in. I can just hit a key and go, knowing that that's actually not there, and I have to take those extra intentional steps, has actually been something that's really kind of shifted the way I kind of engage with it on kind of that downtime, that rest period, that unplugged offline, whatever it might look like. I think
How are you able to feel the hope or the opening in yourself if we keep ourselves so busy at all times that there's no space? And as people might think that we do less during lockdown. Oh my God, we work even harder than before. It is constant. And so if we don't give ourselves this time for not doing and just being, how are we meant to feel those openings in ourselves? And I don't know about you, but that's why I like cooking, right? Because you're doing something, you're just allowing you're allowing yourself a bit of space. Nothing else is going on, or just listen to something nice on the radio or some music, or when you go for the walk, or when you just not do. How can you feel hope if there's no space?
Yeah. I think that's a good place to end the conversation. It's a great question to end on. So yeah, where do you feel hope if there's no space?
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you, Tim.
No, it's been a great joy, and hopefully some other people will get something out of it, and if not, I've had a great morning. So excellent. Well, we'll sign off on the video here, and so thank you for joining us, and have a blessed interfaith week, amongst other things.
Indeed, amen.